Hello, everyone. Welcome to Soul Sessions. I am Debra Maldonado.
I'm Dr. Rob.
And we're with Creative Mind. And this is a Jungian coaching podcast. We talk about all things Jungian, Eastern philosophy, and neuroscience. And today we're continuing our series on neuroscience and mindset. Yeah. We're talking about emotions today, and specifically the emotion of fear and how to take yourself from fear to freedom to create your life. But before we begin, I do want to ask you a favor. If you could subscribe to our podcast, that helps us get more people listening to this great information, and it helps us out a lot. So if you can do that, that would be great. Also, if you're watching us on YouTube, there's a link in the button, a button in the corner, link to subscribe to our channel on YouTube as well. So this will give you a reminder every time we have a new episode, so you don't miss a single one. So today, I love this topic about fear because it gets a bad rap. This terrible thing, fear, we want to avoid it. But it really is part of growth. And we have to look, it's a necessary kind of challenge we have to face when we're growing and changing.
Yeah, what is that saying in the coaching world that if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough?
Yes. And anytime you make a change, you're stepping outside your comfort zone, there's going to be fear. And I think a lot, like for me, doing personal growth for so many years in the beginning, I always thought that when I was feeling bad, it was a bad thing. And I needed to feel positive. And I would beat myself up if I was afraid, and I can't be afraid. And so that created more anxiety to push it away. So we're going to talk about how do we face it with power. So what happens in the brain when we have fear? Let's break it down into some neuroscience.
Yeah, and let's put it in context for those of you that are new to the podcast. We're taking the approach of in talking about neuroscience, we take the approach of the scientific method, which is very, very much a Western approach, a scientific approach, right, to understanding the brain mind. There is an Eastern component to the work that we do because we want to understand consciousness. And consciousness in Eastern philosophy is different than the brain and the mind. You know, and a lot of in the West, we conflate that all the time. We think that the brain is the source of consciousness. But in Eastern philosophy, consciousness is a more fundamental property of the universe that is separate. And we can say that the brain-mind, the mind-body, arises from that deeper element of consciousness in Eastern philosophy.
And in the West, people refer to consciousness as I'm conscious, and my consciousness or my conscious mind, and the conscious thinking is my consciousness, but it's actually the way we use it is more from the Eastern philosophy.
Yes, they in the West, when they say consciousness, what they mean or what they're pointing at is cognition, meaning thinking about something, right? Understanding something or having a thought.
And not being in a coma. You regain consciousness, that type of medical term. Yeah.
That's right. So we're going to take the Western perspective for a little bit to look at the brain and what it's telling us about how it can inform us about good coaching and how we create the things in our lives, how they come into our sphere of awareness, and then how do we deal with that, and what do we do about those things?
Yeah, I think a great coaching model should always have, that depth that Jungian psychology gives us, where we can work with the deep unconscious, but we also want to keep it where we understand the mechanisms of the brain and understand how change happens. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. So let's talk about fear.
Let's talk about fear.
And I have some notes here because I want to get it right. And then we can use it to discuss a little bit further. So fear triggers the amygdala, activating the brain's threat detection circuits and limiting access to higher cognitive functions like decision-making, creativity, and flexibility. And there's some research by Ledoux from 2012 that we'll post in the show notes. So let's look at what this is saying. So the amygdala is our fierce response center.
So like the emotion, where the emotions are, pretty
Much so. Especially those deep kind of primal emotions like fear. You know, it's a survival mechanism, right? All mammals have it. It helps them stay alive, right? Whenever there's a rustling in the bushes, the amygdala kicks in and says, "Look out! It could be a bear. It could be a lion." And then the nervous system kicks in, the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight. In other words, prepares you. If it is a lion, you're going to run, or you're going to fight it, or freeze in order to hide from it, right? So it's built into our deep into our cellular systems to help us survive.
What a good way to think about it is like we have this like conscious evolved brain from like recent, evolution, and that goes offline for a while we get triggered, like in a survival and fear. It's like almost like that rational, like those higher cognitive functions, like almost like reserve themselves, like take a step back because we need to, like almost like when you're like in a car accident, and that you're not don't have time to really think through what's happening. You react, and so that's that reaction to help you survive. And almost like if you took time to think about, oh, there's a lion chasing me. I wonder why that lion. I wonder if that lion's going to eat me. You would be dead already. So it kind of takes over. Yeah.
That's it. Now, this is important, right? Because in our social environment, we typically don't run into lions and bears anymore, but we have a boss that's angry at us, or a situation that calls us to do some public speaking.
Ooh.
Or something like that, right? We all know that. And the same mechanism kicks in. The amygdala kicks in as if it was a real danger, right? That's why people panic when they have to get up on stage and speak, because all of a sudden now there's a threat, and the same mechanisms that helped us survive now are still with us, and it disconnects now the higher cognitive functionings. That's
and the
why
creativity and like more access to more parts of our self. We become this reactive machine.
And we forget our lines. We forget why we were doing the talk, all that stuff, because the system goes into survival mode, which means you don't think about poetry, creativity, higher knowledge. You're simply thinking about, how do I get through the next moment?
And so when we're in, like, let's say, I know we work with a lot of people that change careers. And so there's always that fear of, can I make it? Can I, we train coaches. So their coaches are starting out their business or starting to work with new clients. So all that newness. And if you're filled with fear, you're going to not make rational decisions and maybe even sabotage your own success. Yeah. And then, I think also too, if you're in a position like a corporate job that you're not happy with, there's this idea of chronic fear and chronic anxiety that you're just kind of not even noticing it anymore. You're kind of used to your boss being a jerk and high pressure and lots of work and kind of stuck in that cog. And there's other research that by Sapolsky that you have around that. And let me read it. It says chronic fear or anxiety strengthens neural pathways associated with threat perception, and it reinforces patterns of avoidance and constriction rather than exploration and growth. Sapolsky, 2017. So not only do we go offline, but if we're chronic in fear, it really shuts down. We almost like we rewire our brain to be in that place, like almost like we get into the habit of being anxious.
Yes. So chronic stress then keeps us in that loop and that pattern, because the brain actually changes in structure from the pressure of the environment, right? It's evolutionary psychology essentially says that whatever situation you have to adapt to, your brain will try to adapt to it. So if you're in a stressful situation, your amygdala, your kind of the sense of danger will become much more sensitive. In other words, you'll always be looking out for that danger.
So it's that hypersensitivity that people talk about is really a fear-based response.
And it actually changes the structure of the brain. So the amygdala will actually get thicker. In other words, there's more neurons, or neuronal connections within that little structure, and it becomes more sensitive so that anything triggers it. And so it's a self-defeating loop that people get into. And the thing about the mind is that it will show you the things you expect to see. And so when this rewiring takes place, then you start to see the world through that lens, that everything appears to you as that threat.
Yeah. And even like you said, it's not even neutral. It's like, oh, you're giving me a compliment. What is that about? And you start to not have that like flexible response, and it becomes very rigid. And then it creates patterns of avoidance. And I know for me, when I first decided I wanted to break off on my own and do something different with my life, it took me so long to finally leave that comforting corporate paycheck because of that fear. And so I reinforced that avoidance, like, I didn't want to face that fear. So I'm just going to stay and tolerate. But it's really almost like unconscious, that low-level anxiety that you're just so afraid to face that uncertainty that you just avoid. And then instead of like seeking growth, you're seeking like just maintenance.
That's it.
And so a lot of our clients, a lot of our students come with that kind of, I want to live my purpose, but they have a really great income from their, they've made a lot of success in their job. But then the idea of like leaving that little nest and being responsible for your own income and be an entrepreneur can be very stressful. But if we don't make that choice, we choose fear. We let fear choose us, let the biological part of our body choose our life versus bringing online some higher level, aspirational, spiritual, purposeful expressions of ourselves. And so we have that choice. We were either stuck in this survival mode or we're in creation mode.
Yeah, what's sad is people that are unhappy in their current situation, but they want to create something new, right? They want to become coaches or do their own business or something more creative. But because these patterns are locked into, they've locked into these patterns of avoidance, like you say, then it's very difficult for them to take the opportunities when they arise. It's that fear mechanism kicks in. There's something new, something unknown. I can't risk stepping into that unknown. And they go back, right, to what's familiar. Even though they're unhappy with their situation, they remain in that situation. Of course, it works in relationships as well. People that are not happy in their relationship or their status in relationships, they remain there because of the fear of the unknown. And it's such a simple thing with a coach, right? Through coaching to break that habit, to transcend that pattern.
And that's where Jungian coaching comes in. We work on a deeper level where you're not just forget the fear and do it anyway type of thing, where you're going to go... what we have this, how do we work with this fear? That would be a great way to think about it, is that we have to face it. We never face it and uncover it. It's going to always be, it's almost like there's something wrong with your body, but you never get an x-ray or never go to the doctor and find out what is happening, and you're just tolerating pain. But you go to the doctor and then you get the x-ray and you say, oh, wait, you have this little thing here, we just remove it and now you won't have pain anymore. This isn't working or functioning properly. And so we want to find out what that is. We don't want to let it just stay there because we're afraid to look at it. And fear only has the power we give it. And our mind has the ability to either magnify the fear or diminish the fear. Like our higher mind can do that. And so in Jungian coaching, one of the things we teach is this process called EPI, which is emotional power integration. We're not changing or rewiring the emotion. We're actually going toward it.
Yeah. So when we talk about the brain, we're talking about the hardware.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what we mean by the mind is the software, the programs that run this brain mind.
Mm-hmm.
So we project our fears externally.
Mm-hmm.
That's more a psychological function, not so much a neurological one, but a psychological one. That when we experience fear in us, we project it outward and we say the danger is not, or the cause of that fear is not within me. It's coming from the actual threat out there.
That person or that circumstance or our imagined threat. Most of it, if it is imagined, that you're imagining the worst case scenario all the time.
Well, that's a whole other conversation because what we call reality is our imagined reality.
Yeah.
In other words, it's a controlled hallucination that we're experiencing, and this is neurologically speaking, or neuroscientifically speaking. In other words, this is not New Age kind of conceptualization. We create our own reality internally, right? What we call reality is an internal mental model of what appears to us out there. Now, so when we project, that means then the power is out there, right? The cause of my fear, I'm not seeing it as arising within my mind. I'm seeing it as an actual external threat. When that situation arises, then I have no power over it, because what am I going to do? Just, wait until, they change their mind or some external thing changes, and then I'll take the action. So there is no power in that. In Jungian coaching.
Or waiting. I love this idea. So many people tell me when they're, we have a sales team now, but I used to talk to a lot of people that wanted to change careers and leave the corporate world. And they're like, I'm just not ready yet. I'm just like not ready to make that leap yet. And it's just like, it's not the right time. And that's the ego and the fear speaking for you. And it'll always find a great excuse to not move forward, because that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to keep you in that safety zone. So if you don't examine that and you think out there it's something out there is going to be a threat to me, you're never going to feel empowered in your life. You'll always feel that you're in that defensive mode.
Yeah. So through the coaching, then we help the client reclaim that power and retract the projection, so that they understand, oh, the fear is coming from me. And once they understand that and then are willing to accept it, right? That's the emotional part, because understanding is a cognitive function, but accepting it, right? Really accepting that, oh, I am the cause of my life, my situation.
It's like a deeper realization. Like it's like it hits you more, like, when you have insights, but the when you say that acceptance, it's like that deeper, almost like it's unwavering anymore. It's not just like a loose concept that you're contemplating, but it's like unshakable, that you have a shift in like perception that changes you.
And that's often where people really have a little bit of struggle, right? And that's why coaching is so important, because without it, most people think that if I gain the insight, things will change. But insight doesn't change anything, because all it is a mental exercise. Again, you're simply staying at the perceptual level and thinking through, what
like
are
the rational mind.
Yeah.
And the rational mind would be like, you should go out and do something new. But the irrational mind, the emotional mind is the survival that you're battling. And that's really that part that needs to shift.
Yes, that's true. And then what happens is when you stop at insight, then it creates a really difficult situation for yourself, because then you start to blame yourself.
Yeah.
You're saying, if I know I want to do this, but I'm afraid, that means I'm not good. I'm not good enough.
That's why they say ignorance is bliss. Like, to not know that there's a way out. And then when you come online and you say, oh, wait a minute, I have the power to change this and I could change this, but it's not changing. it's very frustrating. But the thing is, it's not, you need to include the emotion. You need to face the emotion, and you need to face the difficult emotion.
Yeah.
Our whole system, that amygdala, is based on not being uncomfortable. So in order for us to break free, we have to go toward what's not comfortable. And it's really difficult. It's really difficult. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do. It's the best thing you'll ever do, but it's very hard. And so when people say, oh, just change your thoughts and change your life, it sounds really wonderful, but it's very difficult. You have to face what's difficult or what's uncomfortable in you to really, really, truly change. But that's the bad news about change, is that it's not all sunshine and rainbows. You have to really face these really tough things inside yourself.
The good news is that it's very doable with coaching, with proper coaching. Somebody that understands what are the mechanisms that play in the mind brain, so that we can undo that old pattern and then rewire it, right? So the emotional piece, you can think of it as what holds that assumption that you're not able to do something, or that you're too afraid, or that something bad will happen if you take that step. It's an emotional assumption that is unconscious. Because
if you were conscious of it and you would move through it, but it's something that you can't see, and you can't change what you're not aware of.
Yeah. So the insight helps us clarify for the client that it is you who is holding that assumption, and that assumption simply is coming from your past conditioning, something that happened in the past that your mind interpreted as, this means that is not possible for me. And as soon as you start to bring it to awareness, then you're able to change it.
So here's a really common example of that fear that happens with, like, let's say new coaches, because we work with them a lot. And it's very common, and then they do this work and they're free of it. We don't keep them stuck here. But many people, when they first start a new career or a new service, and they're doing it for the first time, they feel a little hesitant. Can I really help someone? That's a natural. Can I really help someone? And so their fear of not being able to help them, like, they're conscious of it. They have an insight, like, I know I'm holding myself back. But we want to go deeper into it. And the question is not, I'm afraid of, because I'm not going to help them, but what happens if I don't? So we're going deeper into what am I really afraid of? It's not just about helping someone, but like that deeper, like, who am I if I sell coaching and someone doesn't change, and like digging deeper into those assumptions. And that opens up you keep digging, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, this is like not anything to do with the clients, not anything to do with me. It's this old system that I bought into, and it starts to almost like it's purifying. Like you talk about purifying the mind. You're like bringing it up so you can purify it. It's like the light of awareness and the witness mind looking at this, examining this, and feeling the feeling is like a system of purification. And so what happens in the brain when we're doing this?
Yeah, so as we free our mind from our past conditioning, let's say from these repeating neural patterns, right? Then we start to break through to seeing what is actually there. In other words, our brain starts to perceive a truer reality, which is infinite potential. Because think about it this way. The moment exists in a fresh, new way. Each moment is completely new. But we're the ones bringing in our past experiences into the moment through projection.
And our whole emotional patterns is just projecting and it's almost like a filter over what's there. And then we just focus on the things that we expect to see.
The same old patterns.
Yeah.
The same old patterns.
We never see like, oh, wait, there's a potential here.
As we start to retrain the mind to see simply what is here, we start to see a lot of opportunities are in the moment. A lot of opportunities. They've always been there. It's simply that when we're seeing the moment through our past conditioning, we're seeing a reflection of our own mind, of our past. So once we start to see the moment for what it is, which is infinite potential, then we can use our imagination, right? We all have this wonderful, powerful imagination to create something completely new.
And then as we purify the mind, it's like almost like creating a soil and a fertile soil for something new. I always say, like, think about in the winter when the rain comes and it's the hardened soil, it just flows off because the ground's frozen. It's really hard to get any new ideas in, and that's how we are in our fixed state. But as the spring comes and there's like the warmth and the soil becomes soft, the rain comes and it's able to have those nutrients. That's kind of how our mind is. Like, it becomes rich with creativity, innovation, expansiveness. And I love what you always say is that our brain starts to look for those opportunities and recognizing them versus it's like looking for everything that's wrong all the time and everything's not working. How many of you can relate to that? And you keep telling yourself things aren't working, and then you keep seeing it, and it's like you're reinforcing that behavior, and then you're getting fear around it. You go through that fear and you unpack it, and then all of a sudden it doesn't become something you realize what it is, nothing to be afraid of, that it's your mind creating this, it's not reality. And then creates this, like, we can use the higher forms of our brain power and our consciousness to create something new.
Yeah, because essentially the ultimate reality is this, that there is no difference between what you call your mind and what you call the external world. In other words, what you see out there, what you experience in your everyday life is reflecting your mind. That's what your mind is. It's all the thoughts and experiences and learning that you've had in your past projected onto the screen of the external world. So you're seeing your own mind. That's why you repeat the same patterns most of the time. And most people will simply repeat the patterns for years and years because or they believe that they don't have any agency, any way of changing the pattern. They believe that it's out there, therefore I can't change it. Once you understand that you're seeing your own mind, that means if you change your thoughts, once you get to this stage, right? We're not saying anybody
Think positive,
can do it.
Yeah,
exactly. Once you get to this stage, then your imagination becomes your way of creating. Because before that, imagination is simply fantasy.
Or you're imagining what you don't want to have in your life. So you wake up. How many of you have had insomnia and your mind is thinking about all the worst case scenarios in your life and, going way into the future? You're using your imagination from fear. And so that mechanism is there. So why can't you use it for something you want to create instead of what you don't want to create? And you can't, it's really hard to do it when you're in fear. Because when you're in fear, remember that front part of your brain is like kind of shut down. It's not completely shut off, but you're not using the energy. The blood's flowing in a different place. And you're really, all your energies into that survival. There's no space. And we can all relate to that, where you feel like when you're in fear, there really is no place for creativity. There's no place to imagine. And so that's why writers, they go and they leave and they go to their writer's cottage and they do their creative work because they can't do it in their normal everyday life. It's like creating the space, like a canvas for us to create our life from.
That's it. So it is a process. It does require some coaching, training, reformulating the way you see your reality. But it's very doable because we have all the tools in our mind. It comes equipped with everything we need to enact that process. Because it's a natural process. It's simply that it's like we're born with these supercomputers, but with no instructions. And so most of us just use the computer to play little video games and chess and those kind of things instead of using its full potential.
Yeah. And fear is, it's what inhibits us. and we have to find a way to work with it and face it. And the thing is, it's rewarding because it's like it takes a courageous force in us to face that fear, like a warrior facing the dragon. And we once we do that and we transcend it and we move through it, we become invincible. And we start to see the world in more of a friendly place. And I think the one thing that contributes to fear the most is that we feel like we're separate from our outside reality. That one idea, I find that when I get stressed or anxious, I think, oh, wait, my mind is creating everything. And it relaxes me right away to know, oh, wait, I have the power. Fear is typically driven by the idea that there's a power out there, the world out there is scary, we have to survive. So if you can remember one thing, if you remember that you're creating your life, the fear starts to fall away. If you do the work and not blame yourself for things that aren't working out, and really know how to work with your mind. So
that's right. So if you're seeing limitation, you can be sure that your mind is in fear. Mm-hmm. You might not even experience it as fear, but there's unconscious, let's say an unconscious assumption that there is something threatening in the new situation that you want to get into. The last thing we want to communicate is that emotional energy of fear then is transmuted into creative power.
It's energy. It's just, it's the pushing you back. So imagine using that same energy, harnessing it to push you forward, propel you forward.
Yes.
Like a slingshot.
Yes, that's right. As we correct the misperception that things are out there and are pushing against us, we gain then the potential to use the emotional energy for creative endeavors, which means creating our life.
Yeah, it's a beautiful process. I really enjoyed this. Just to underscore that fear creates limitation, and then we see that limitation in the world. We have to face our fear. We need more than an intellectual understanding of how the mind works and how the mind is reflecting the external. And if we can work with the emotion and get to the root assumption, purify the mind, and then that frees up that energy to be creative energy, and we start to see opportunities out in the world. So I have a quick tip too before we go, that anytime you're feeling frustrated and you're trying something and you're getting that frustration because you're not getting the results, the best thing you can do is take a break. Because the more you push against it, the more you're reinforcing that things aren't working, and it kind of you're wiring your brain to think nothing is ever going to work. So you got to take a step back, take a walk around the block, meditate, do something. And this is a quick tip but notice how your mind shifts if you just take a break and start and like questioning yourself, like, why am I all stressed out about this? And what am I attached to? And ask yourself some deeper questions. But that's going to help free yourself and create more creative actions instead of frustrating actions and results.
Love it.
So take care, everyone. Next week, we're going to be talking about the observer effect and how what we observe in the world creates our life from a neuroscience perspective. So you don't want to miss it. Take care, everyone. And before we go, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. And if you are watching us on YouTube, click the button in the corner and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Take care.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.